Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Reinard, and I am a product specialist here at Intuit, and your presenter for this afternoon's meeting, which is an overview of ProSeries professional tax software. Before I begin, first of all, I would just like to say thank you. I do appreciate so many of you joining me on the call today and taking time out of your schedule to be here. This meeting is going to last right about 60 minutes, and really the goal of the meeting isn't so much to show you every feature and function of ProSeries, because there are many, but really to give you a good general overview of the end-to-end process of preparing returns in ProSeries, and also introducing some of the functionality that we've attached to the program to make our customers more productive. So by the time I'm done here today, and if you're enjoying it, I think you'll really learn how to use it and kind of what the benefits are. I know some of you on the call are probably already using ProSeries, and if you are, we thank you very much, and I guarantee you there's going to be some things that you're going to see that you just weren't aware of. Some of you are using other products, and maybe you're just here kicking the tires, and frankly, some of you are just here for the credit for the course. I'm totally fine with that too. But regardless of why you're here, I hope you enjoy it. I break this into two pieces. The first part of it is going to be about 5 minutes worth of slides that I use to introduce ProSeries to you. Once I'm done with those, I'll pull up the live program on my screen, and we'll spend the rest of the time using the live application to demonstrate. I often find that's a lot easier or more beneficial than me showing you a bunch of slides and trying to be more theoretical than actually seeing the real thing. If you have any questions as I'm presenting the material, there is a questions panel that you can open and send me questions. And every so often, I'll check the questions to be sure that I'm keeping up. Oftentimes, people will go into the questions area and let me know where they're from. So if you want to jump in there and let me know the city and state you're watching from. I'm a home office person for Intuit. It's my 25th year working remotely, and I reside in Long Beach, California, which is just a little bit south of Los Angeles. So if you want to jump in there and let me know where you're from, that'd be great. All right, wonderful. People are already doing it. So we've got Findlay, Ohio, South Carolina, Atlanta, Sparta, Tennessee, Rhode Island, Arizona. So yeah, I always get a good mix of people across the country, pretty much every state, because we have over 300 attendees today. So I get a lot of different people. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start with my slideshow. And by the way, for those of you who are in Florida, best of luck with the storm. I know that's a pretty scary proposition, but we're all thinking about you here, and hopefully everything's going to be okay for y'all. So let's move on to slide number 2. This is my biographical slide. So I've been with Intuit. I started my career with a product called Lacert back when I was a sophomore in college. And then Intuit bought the company, and I've been with Intuit ever since. So 42 years in the industry. I am an expert on not just ProSeries, but Lacert, as well as our cloud program that we call ProConnect. I do a lot of training of new customers as part of my job. I train all the new staff that we bring on each quarter. I do lots of these webinars. I do over 100 a year. And I do travel some and speak to different societies on, technology subjects. My background, though, is more in product development. I spent about 15 years as the head of product management overseeing our Lacert program, but today we're talking ProSeries. So to get credit for the course, there are 2 things you have to do. One is I'm going to ask you 4 polling questions. Make sure you answer at least 3 of those. And secondly, make sure you stay in the conference for a minimum of 50 minutes. And if you do both of those things, the certificates will be emailed to you. Generally takes about 2 days, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter, depending on the size of the crowd. So watch for those, but those will be coming into your email. So specifically what we're going to cover today are the following items. I'm going to give you a really good end-to-end workflow overview once we're done with the slides. I'm literally going to start with the client screen, take you through data entry, how we do diagnostics, and then pointing out some of the better functionality in the program, which is, I think you'll like. I'm also going to talk about import options. There are different ways to get data from like brokerage accounts, things like that. We're going to talk about tax planning. There are multiple tax planning tools built into ProSeries, so I want to show you what those are all about. We're going to talk about how to do electronic signatures. That's a really good component of the product. And finally, I'm going to show you or talk about different ways to do document collection. We actually work with a third party called Smart Vault, where we have a direct connection. So it will send tax returns to Smart Vault, so you don't have to save returns and upload them. We also have our own tool called Intuit Link that a lot of clients use, because you can send engagement letters, have clients answer questions, and have them upload documents. Richard, yes, this does also qualify for CE credit. So yes, as long as you've got your all the information filled out correctly, you should get that as well. Oh, so why ProSeries? So ProSeries, this product has been in the market now for about 42, 43 years. It is one of the most widely used applications, roughly 65,000 firms across the country that use it. And but really, it's another Intuit product. You know, think about all the financial products we have, and this is just another in the long list of those. The other thing about the program is it is a desktop application. This is not a cloud program. However, we do have a lot of clients who use it in what we call a hosted environment. What that means is you're still using the same program, but there's a third party, and the company that we recommend is called Rightworks. They installed the product on a private server for you, and you're logging in. So if you want to get rid of having to do downloads, updates, worrying about security, a lot of our clients now use the program more remotely, and it really is good for firms that have a lot of remote employees. It makes that really simple. Okay, the other thing about ProSeries, it's got very good diagnostics, especially the way they're implemented. You're going to see very quickly how easy it is to clear the issues, how we identify critical issues to allow you to e-file the returns successfully. Of course, this program, and by the way, and you may not know this, but there are actually two versions of the program. There is a professional model, which is the one I'm showing you today. It has all the bells and whistles that a lot of the bigger firms like to use. We also have a scaled down version of ProSeries called ProSeries Basic. Very low cost, but a lot of the functionality is kind of stripped out. And some people like that as they get started with their practice, and then they kind of outgrow it, and the data files are shared, so it's easy for them to move up or upgrade to ProSeries Professional. And we'll talk about some of that other stuff later. So the two tax planning tools that are available in ProSeries are, one is called a what if worksheet, and users use this when they get the question, you know, how's my tax return? What am I going to pay, or what's my refund going to be next year, assuming nothing changes based on next year's tax rates? So that's a planning tool that allows you to give them the answer to that question within a reasonable, estimation. And then the one on the right, the tax planning worksheet, is a more detailed worksheet where you can actually pull the data in from the return and then do multi-year projections and change the amount of, maybe they're going to acquire a rental property next year. You want to plug in 30K of rental income, things like that. I'll show both of these live when I'm in the software today. All right, so that's just a little bit of information on ProSeries in terms of where we are in the industry, how many users we have, that sort of thing. So I'm going to say this once more because we now have about 400 people on the call. To get credit for the course, I'm going to ask you 4 polling questions. Just be sure you answer at least 3 of those. Make sure you stay in the course for 50 minutes minimum. But the first polling question of the day is, how satisfied are you with your current tax preparation software and your firm's overall workflow? You should see that popping up on your screen there in a minute. Every so often, someone will say, Kevin, I can't see the polling question. So just to head that off, sometimes it'll open behind the main program window. So if you want to minimize that, it might be lurking in there behind, but hopefully everybody can see it okay. And thank you for voting quickly. We're already at 90%. So for this group, 19% of you say we are completely satisfied. 41% say satisfied, but room for improvement. 18% are somewhat satisfied, but actively looking. 2%, unfortunate, say not satisfied, I cannot continue on this way. And the 19% of you are not currently using professional tax software. So I always like to give it 1 minute. So I'm going to do a little countdown now from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And let's go ahead and close out poll question 1 and get back to it. All right, so this is the point of the conversation where I pull up ProSeries on my screen, and hopefully everybody can see that nice. And when you open the app, this is the first screen that you see, and we call it Homebase. Our other programs refer to this as the client screen. But basically, it's a list of all the tax returns, and I've got about 8 or 9 returns in my system. Many of our users have hundreds, if not 1,000 returns in this client list, and you can see that the clients in the first column are sorted alphabetically. Now, the Homebase screen in ProSeries is where you do a lot. This is where you add clients. If you wanted to make a copy of a return, maybe to use the copy to do a little current planning. You can lock tax returns that are e-filed so that you can still open them, but you don't, but nobody can change data. You can put passwords on them and so on and so forth. All right. So that's what this screen does. And the other thing is, if you look in the upper left of the screen, there's a little box up there that says Homebase View. And right now it says 1040 individual, which means this is a list of just my individual clients. But if you open that box, it's going to list all the programs. You can click corporate to see the corporate clients, partnership to see the partnership clients, or you can say all tax returns, and then you'll see a big long list, and it will be a combination of your 1040s and business, but you're able to actually segment them out. What's also found in the Homebase view screen is the e-file process. So when you're doing returns and you're ready to send them for electronic filing, or maybe you've already sent some tax returns and you just want to see the status of them, then you go to the Homebase view box, and we have a special section called the e-file center. What'll happen is we're going to change the columns. Only those clients marked as e-filed returns, which for you is probably going to be everybody, are going to be listed. I only have one client. So if I want to send a return, all I do is I click the client, and there's a little EF button at the top of the screen, says EF now, and click it and send it. If you want to send a whole bunch, just select all the clients at once and send them in a big giant batch. There's no limit on how many returns you can send at once, or you can, again, do them one at a time. Now, once e-filed returns are transmitted, we have these little buttons across the e-file screen so you can filter on them, meaning the all button is clicked. So that's just going to be all returns eligible for e-file. But if you can click on the one that says rejected, it will only show you returns that may have been rejected, even though we have an extremely low rejection rate. How many returns are currently accepted? Hit that button and we're going to list those on the screen. Okay. The other thing on this screen that you'll do, if you like the feature and you want to use it, is send electronic signature requests. You see there's an e-signature actions button with a request link next to it. That's what you click to transmit or send an electronic request to the client. I will go into more detail on that a little bit later, but that's kind of your main e-file screen for ProSeries. So let's go back to the 1040 view. Now, another thing that users like about this last thing is there's a lot of data on the screen. I've got the client name. I can send a portal request by clicking the Intuit link feature, and that will send a request. I've got their emails. I have a thing called client status. This isn't the e-file status. This is just kind of like a label that you're putting on the return to know where it's at in your preparation process. You're always going to have returns that are on extension, potentially, people that are, you're waiting for information. So you can mark statuses and keep track of the client's progress in using that column. But literally, you have about, I think the last count is about 350 different things that you could put out on this screen. So I always tell new users to think of this as like a big spreadsheet. You want to add a column that shows business income? Great. Add a column that says business income. You'll see the amount of clients' business income. Who has alimony paid? Who has alimony received? So you can, refund, balance due, whatever. You can design the screen, and then as you do the tax returns, we're going to go ahead and fill out the screens with the data from those returns. So it's really helpful. All right. So that's kind of the beginning part of this. Now, if you just want to add a brand new client, never done it before, there's a button in the upper left of the screen that says new client file, and then we list the programs you've installed, and you can start any one of the types of returns here. But for the purpose of this meeting, I've already created a sample client just so that it'll be a little bit easier to walk through. And the name of my client is Brad and Melanie Hall. So I double click the client. It opens the tax return. And when it opens, we take you to a screen called the Federal Information Worksheet. A lot of programs call this the client information screen. It's all the basic stuff. Names, socials, occupation, date of birth. Here's where you would plug in contact information. The one contact information I would always put in would be their email address, because we do use that in electronic signatures, as well as a feature where you can track missing information and email the client directly, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But then down here is where you'd plug in the address. Here's where the filing status is entered. Of course, all the dependents are entered there. So that's how you start a return on the Federal Information Worksheet. Now you notice at the top, there are some different sections of this form. So instead of having to scroll down to find a section, we give you these little buttons that will zoom you directly to the section that you're looking for. So for example, I have a client that's always been getting a paper check, but they want to get their refund faster, so they want to put in direct deposit information. Click Quick Zoom, which takes us to the section that says direct deposit. Indicate yes, they want to do a direct deposit. We're going to tell you these are the fields that need to be filled out, whether it's checking, savings, routing, or account number. Okay, or if I say no, that all goes dead. Some of you may or may not be familiar with this functionality called pay by refund. I'm not sure what % of our clients use it, but I know a lot of people do. It's a way that you can get paid directly from your client's refund. You enroll with one of the participating banks, and they serve as kind of like a middleman. The refund goes to the participating bank account. They take your fees and deposit them in your bank account. They take a fee that the client pays, and then the balance goes directly to the client, however they want, whether it's a check or direct deposit or whatever. So just so you're aware, we do have this thing called pay by refund. All right, so that's the initial screen of ProSeries where you kind of get the return started. Now, let's say I'm brand new, I just filled out the screen, and now I want to add some things to the tax return. How do I do it? On the left-hand side of the screen, you see a section called Common Forms. We put these forms in this list because we know that these are probably going to show up in 80% of the tax returns that you do. You'll see things like W-2s, all the various types of 1099s like Rs and MISCs and NECs, Social Security, Schedules A, B, C, D, and E, K-1s, employee business expense, different basically things that are pretty common. So if you had not started this return, but you wanted to add a W-2, you just go to the left and click where it says W-2 worksheet. Now, if you don't have any W-2s, it'll just take you directly to the W-2 screen. But I already have two, XYZ and City of Fort Worth. So it's asking me which one I would like to open. Or at the bottom, it says, enter the name of the employer if I want to add yet another one. I'll just open City of Fort Worth. And again, it's a W-2, right? So here's all the data, box 12, all that, so that fill out your W-2. When you're done, and maybe the client has interest in dividend income, if you look on the left, it says Schedule B because that's where all that goes, right? And if you hover over it, it says interest in dividend income. Now, ProSeries in many ways is considered a forms-based data entry system. What does that mean? Well, it means if I click Schedule B, the data entry screen looks a lot like the actual form itself. So I would plug in the payers and the interest in this section, the payers and the dividends down below. So you're basically kind of filling out a form. It looks a lot like the tax form. Client has a, Schedule C, go to the left, click Schedule C. I don't have one. It says enter the name of the first business, pop it in. We're going to drop you on a screen that looks just like Schedule C. So that's how you begin a tax return using the Common Form section. Now, what if there's something that you need, like, you have farmer clients and you need Schedule F, and it's not as common? If you scroll that bar down a little bit, what we do is we take all of the input screens and we break them down by category. So all your income screens, like farm income and all the others, are going to be listed there. Any adjustments to income for things like, 2106, IRA contributions, student loan, all the deduction screens are listed under deductions. So you can pick more things from there. Now, I happen to be a keyboard person. I don't like to use my mouse because once I start doing data entry, I'm hammering the keyboard. There's a keyboard shortcut, F6. So if I hit F6, it brings up this box. This box is a list, basically all the forms and schedules available in the program. And all you have to do is begin to type. So if I type A, you see how it puts me on Schedule A? I press enter. Now I'm on itemized deductions. I want to hit F6. I type 2441, press enter. boom, takes me to the dependent care screen. So I like the keyboarding, and you'll learn those keystrokes really quickly because they're pretty smart. They make sense. So that's how you can kind of add other things to the return. So I think you kind of get what I'm doing here, right? We use the common forms, or we go down below and pick anything else, or we hit the F6 key and just type what we want. We'll find it. Now, on the left-hand side, above the common forms, I actually collapsed a screen above that just so I can kind of replicate how it is to create a new return. But I'm going to open that section. And what it's called is forms in use. So as you begin to build the tax return, this is where you see everything that's already part of the return. And it's a combination of things. You're going to see your information worksheet screen. Here are both the W-2s. Here are the Schedule E. Here's the K-1s, and so on. So this is going to be basically expand and contract based upon what you're adding. And some of the items are automatic. Like if I go over here to the left and I click on, there's a Schedule E, and underneath it, it says, here's the asset entry or the depreciation report related to that particular rental property. Or if I click down below, it says Schedule E 2-year comparison, which is automatically created. Okay. A little bit lower on the screen, you're going to see things like the 2-year comparison document, right? So it's 22, 23. What's the difference as a dollar and as a percentage? Another one that users like is we create this one called a tax history report. This is a 5-year look. We don't really compare one year with another because it's hard to do that when you've got 5 years, but you can look at this and, if I've only been using the program for 2 years, I'll have 2 years worth of data, but I can scroll down to the bottom and see what the refunds were over the multiple years of rates, tax rates, all of that. So that's basically how you start the creation of a tax return in the system. It's not that difficult, pretty smart. All right, so before I move on, I'm going to ask the next polling question, and that is, in what type of an environment do you like to run your software? You could be a desktop only person. You could be a desktop person who likes to have their program hosted by the company we use called Writeworks, or you maybe just want to have everything in the cloud. So go ahead and fill that out. While you're doing that, I'm just going to take a quick sip of water and I will be right back. So someone asked the question, are there handouts? I don't create handouts for this, but what I do, and I'm going to put my email address in the chat area where I was telling you where the meeting was going to start. I'm going to pop my email address in there. If you want, I can send you a recording of this course, which becomes available about an hour after the course ends. So just shoot me an email, Kevin. I'd love to have a copy of the recording, and I'll be happy to send it to you. All right, so for this group, 54% of you say we like desktop software, 10% would use it in a hosted environment, and 36% of you say in the cloud. And as I mentioned in my earlier meeting today when I was demonstrating Lacert, for those of you who are interested in a cloud program, just know that tomorrow, 11 a.m. Pacific time, I'm actually doing a course on our cloud program. We call it ProConnect. There are many advantages to that, not the least of which all I have to have is a computer or a mobile device with a browser, and I don't have to install anything, and it's all up to date. There are many more benefits than that, of course, but if you want to check that out, I'd be happy to see you there. Okay, so let's get back to it. I'm going to close out the polling question and get back to the demo. So I'm going to go on the left-hand side and I'm going to click on Schedule E. And as you notice with the other forms, it looks a lot like the form itself, right? So I dropped down and I plugged in the rental income of $32,500. And I failed to mention something, but this program is one of the few programs in the industry where it's what we call auto-calculating. So you put the numbers in, and in the background, it's always computing the latest results of the return. Right, so if I scroll down to the bottom of Schedule E, I would have a bottom line, and so it doesn't ever require that you calculate. What it also gives us is in the upper right of the screen, you might notice up there it says my current refund is $6,144. So let me show you how fast the program updates. I'm going to go to the left and go back to the Fort Worth W-2, and I'm going to change the federal income tax withheld from 1,000 to 6,000. Watch how quickly the refund changes to 11,144. That's called the refund monitor. Some people like to see how it's going as they enter data. You can turn that off if you don't like it. But so that's how quickly the program updates, but there's not really a requirement to calculate things. But let's go back to Schedule E, and I'm going to scroll down into the section where we enter all of our expenses. So here I have 12,000 in advertising, cleaning, and maintenance. So let me show you a couple features here. Now I'm showing you them on Schedule E, but just know that everything I'm about to show you, you can do anywhere. I just happen to use the rental screen to show them. So the first one is you have a client that has a business or they have a rental property and they have a vehicle and you'd like to add auto expenses. How would you do it? Well, you go to the form, to the auto expense field, and to the right of the field, there's a little magnifying glass that you click. And it says, enter the make and model of the first vehicle. So I'm just going to type in Ford. And then it drops us on the screen where we have up to 3 vehicles per page where you can enter the vehicle, the date, place, and service, all the mileage, all the expenses, and then whatever's better, that number will auto flow back to the Schedule E to the auto line. So we're basically linking to a worksheet that we're filling out that's dumping the data back onto the form, okay? Now the other one here is same thing. I mean, if you have assets, right? I've got $10,000 in current year depreciation. Well, I'm gonna click the button and it tells me I've already got an asset, which is the condominium, but I wanna go down to the bottom and add another one. So me being super creative, I'll say asset 2. And it drops us on the screen where we enter assets. So I put in a date, place, and service of 2023. I fill out the cost, which maybe is 2,500 bucks. And then you pick from the type of asset it is. So maybe it's, I don't know, pick something here, rental furnishings, okay? So then if I go back to the form, you can see that immediately that the depreciation number has been updated. So it's that quick, okay? Another thing that's nice about depreciation is we do generate depreciation schedules, of course. But when you're on the depreciation entry screen, you're going to see something down here that's called this quick zoom to the asset life history. And this is a printable document if you want to include it in the client copy where you see the life of the asset, right? All the depreciation over the life of it. So that's a nice report too that some programs don't produce. So kind of nice there as well. All right. Now back on the form. Another feature that clients use all the time is, hey, the client told me that they have $12,000 in advertising expenses, but they're not sure. So I want to put that in as a placeholder. So the way I do it is I put in the number and I right click and I say, I want to mark this field as estimated. And what it'll do is it'll change it to red. So I know it's an estimate. And the good thing is the reason it's red is because it becomes a critical diagnostic, meaning if I don't clear that, I can't e-file because our assumption is you don't have the right number there, right? And I'll show you later on how we are going to show you or tell you that, hey, don't forget, you've got an amount on that line for advertising that's currently marked as an estimate. So you can do that on any single field. You also may notice on the top right of the advertising field, top right of the travel field, I've got a little pencil there. What that means is I put a note on that field. So these are called field notes. So if I want to drop a note on a field that I want to remember, I can right click, I can say add or edit a note. I didn't say it was a really good note. It says this is a note. You can make notes on any single field throughout the program if you'd like. Now, the common question I get when I show that is there another place where I can just make notes about the client or about this year's tax return? And the answer is yes. So remember before I was showing you on the client screen or on the Homebase how we have a status and you can track the status of the current return? On the left-hand side, there is a status screen in my forms in use. This is the screen that you use to mark the current status. So the last status I marked was the tax return had been signed and it posts the current date. Whatever the most recent date for a status is the one that shows up on my client screen as a status. Okay, so that's how you do that. Now down below, we have 2 sections, current year comments and permanent comments. You know the difference. Any current year comments are just for the 2023 return and they do not roll forward to 2024. The ones down here, permanent comments roll from one year to the next, to the next, to the next. So there you go. All right. Yeah, good question here from Susan too. This is a very common question. If I go back to Schedule E, all of the fields give you the ability to click a button. So like if you've got total of commissions is 10,000 bucks, but you want to break that down on any line, you just hit the little button to the right of it, and it gives you like a supporting schedule where you can type the description, the amount, the description, the amount. We'll take the total and we'll put the total on the field, and then we will shade this with a different color so that you know you've got some sub entries basically, right? Okay. You know what, Stephen? I don't know if there is a limitation on the. That's a very good question. I don't think there is any type of limitation on the notes. I just don't know. I should know that, but I don't. Maybe 5,000 characters, 2,500. As you continue to add notes, this is going to continue to stretch. So I don't know of any character limitation to that. There might be. I just don't know. All right. So let's go back to Schedule E. So far, we've learned how to link to automobiles, add assets, mark things as estimated numbers, put notes on fields, and how to create kind of random notes for the client. The next and last thing that I always like to show is a very big time saver, and that is if you've got, let's say the client says, I have no idea what I paid in commissions, or hey, they brought you, they're taking Social Security every year, but they lost their 1099 SSA 1099. We call that missing information. And what most clients do that aren't using ProSeries is they get out a piece of paper and then they write down all the things that the client didn't bring them. And then they call the client or they spend time drafting emails to the client to remind them. So we've made this more of an electronic process. So let me show you how it works. So let's say I don't know the number for commissions. I just want to track commissions. I right click, and instead of saying mark it as an estimated number, I click this one that says add or edit missing client information. And in the upper left, the box opens up. And what it's doing is it's adding every field that is missing in this return to the box. Once I've got it and I feel satisfied that I've marked all the missing information, to the right on the box, there's a button that says I can either print it or email it. An email is automatically created, and all you have to do is hit the email button and we'll email it. Or if you want just to print it because the client is in the office with you, there's a print button right next to the email button that you can click and just print it out and hand it to them. So it's a really nice way to track missing information that just makes it a lot simpler and saves customers generally about 12 or 13 minutes on those returns. So yeah. All right, so we're good so far, right? So the next thing I want to segue to is the diagnostic process. So how do you know what your issues are? Not your personal issues, but something that needs to be fixed in the tax return before you can e-file it, what we call critical errors. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples. So if I open up the information worksheet, remember the first page we were looking at with the name and address and all that stuff on it? Okay, here is Brad Hall, and I'm going to remove his occupation. I'm just going to delete it because I didn't put it in, and immediately the box turns red. What it's telling me is on this field, that's mandatory. I've got to put something there or I can't e-file the tax return. Considered a critical error. So why is that important? Well, I haven't put in a work phone or a cell phone number for the spouse. If I deleted her email address, that wouldn't turn red. While those are nice to have in the program, they're not required for e-filing. We're only marking the things that are actually required. Okay. A very good example of this is also on the car and truck expense worksheet. I put in Ford and it gave me one red field. It says, hey, I need to put in a date, place, and service. So I do that, and immediately it's literally telling me all the fields that need to be filled out on this document. So if you're brand new to the program, this is a great way to kind of have it lead you through what is required and what is not. Okay, so that's kind of how we do diagnostics. So you go through all your screens, you've got all these red fields all over the place. How do you know where they're at? On the left-hand side in the forms in use, we give you little error codes. There's an error code on the information worksheet, error code on Schedule E, there's an error code on the asset entry worksheet. So because we're auto-calculating, and this is a big difference between ProSeries and a lot of other tax programs. Most programs treat the diagnostics as like this secondary process. I put all my data in, Then I go to a screen where the diagnostics are, and then I click on one. It brings me back to where I was, and then I fix it. But a lot of times I have to recalculate and go back and forth like 15 times. Because we're auto calculating, we show you what is missing over here on the left. And all you have to do is click the hyperlink on information worksheet, and we put you right on the field. If I go off that field, you see how it's red. So all I do is I put in PM, and the moment I press enter, it removes the code because it calculated and got rid of it. Okay. Oh, I want to go and see what's missing on Schedule E. Oh, line 5A is marked as estimate. Put in the correct number and then unmark it. Well, the correct number the client gave me was 10,000. So I right click, I say unmark the estimate, which removes the red field and removes the error code on the left. What's missing on the asset entry worksheet? Oh, there's a question of whether or not this was qualified property for economic stimulus. Nope. Oh, education. We have an education optimizer. So do you want to run the optimizer? Yes. And then back to the car and truck expense where I have 8 errors because I just didn't fill it out. See how easy that is? So for some of you, that might take away 50% of the work that you're doing trying to clear diags because you're not jumping back and forth. They're just right there in your kind of as you go. Another good example, not to prolong this, but on the information worksheet, down a little further, there are some questions about EIC, right? Required to calculate EIC. These will not turn red until such time that they're in an EIC situation, and then they will turn red and you'll get the hyperlink because we know because they got EIC that you have to fill out the questions. So kind of even after the fact will alert you to things that maybe weren't there initially kind of thing, right? So I probably overdid that a little bit, but hopefully that makes sense. Another common question I get about ProSeries: how do I remove something from the list of things on the left? I use the car and truck expense as an example, but I don't really have a vehicle. How do I get rid of it? Just put your mouse on top of it and right click and say, remove the Schedule E car and truck expense for Ford. And then it will ask you, are you really, really sure you want to do this? Say yes, and then it's removed. So anything like you have multiple W-2s from the prior year, want to get rid of a couple of them, right click, remove them. That's how it works. Okay. So I think you kind of get the flow. The only other thing I would say is that if you're ever completely stumped and don't know where to put something, there is a really good button above the forms in use. It's green that says, where do I enter it? And a search box comes up. Type whatever you want. You could type a form like 2441 and we'll link you right to the dependent screen. You want to look for all the entries related to alimony, type alimony, and here's where you would go for received or paid. So that's super helpful as well. I have a lot of people that use that as a way to enter new forms. They just type Schedule F, they type whatever in that box. You can do it for that as well. All right. So enough of that. Let me, so I think you get it, right? The only other thing I would say that I didn't discuss earlier is you have a lot of control in what prints with different types of tax returns. You have a client copy, you have a government copy, you have a firm copy that you like to keep for yourself. All of those are editable. So, I talk to clients all the time and they say, hey, I don't like to give my client all the worksheets because they just don't care about them, right? All I want to give them is all the forms, a letter and an invoice and a 2-year comparison. And I have other people who say I bill by the pound, and if there's a worksheet to print, I want it to print because I want the tax return to be 17 inches thick. However you fall on that spectrum, go up to the file menu, and there's a section in here that says print options. And in here, you see filing copy, client copy, preparer copy. You open the section that you'd like to edit. This one says W-2, 1095, 1099, and K-1 worksheets. So you're going to see in the client copy, the default answer is always going to be if used, which means if they have multiple W-2s, it's going to print a worksheet for it. If you don't want it, you just go, never. And you just make these edits to what you like to print, what you don't. And this is where we look every time we print that copy. Okay, so it's really not, and you have the ability to override this when you're printing returns and turn things off. You can do that later, but that's a nice way to be able to control what's going to actually print in certain copies of tax returns. Mark asked a question. We don't have any built-in tax research in ProSeries at all. There are companies out there that do that because they are research like RAA and CCH, but we don't have anything built into ProSeries for that. Anyway, although there is a button at the top of when you're on a certain form, like if I'm on a 2210, there's a button that says government instructions. Basically what that does is just open up the instructions for the form that you're on. So that's really what it does. Yeah. All right, so the last thing I'm going to show you before I kind of switch gears a little bit is this, and that is the tax planning tools. On the left-hand side of the screen, if I scroll down to the very bottom, there's a section that says miscellaneous. And under there is this thing called the what if worksheet. And below that, there is a tax planner. So if I click the what if worksheet screen, it opens up. And what it's done, and let me back this out a little bit, it brings in the current tax return data into column number 1. Column number 2, I tell it I want to use 2024 tax rates. So now I can scroll to the bottom. Remember, this is the one that is answering the question, what am I going to owe or what's my refund next year, assume things don't change all that much. That's what the what if worksheet is for. Now the tax planner is a different animal altogether. I created, and you can have up to 4 tax plans per client. I have one that I created called Plan 1. Now this is a little different. What you do is it pulls in the 2023 tax return, but then you can tell us how many years you want to project. So I want to do a projection 2024, 2025, and maybe even go out as far as 2026 or 7. Okay, so that's how you design what you're doing. Now, if in the 2024 column, you want to add business income, which you see I did here, I added 30,000 in business income. The way I did that was I clicked the button on the field and it took me to the business income where I dropped in 30K, okay? When I drop that number in, if I go back to the worksheet, it adds it to their current wages, 30,000 bucks or their current income. And then down at the bottom, it shows me, well, looks like last year you got a refund of $10,800. This year, you're going to owe 997 based on that, business income or the rental income or things like that. That's kind of how that works. So those are the 2 options you have for planning. All right, so I'm going to now save this tax return. Let me make sure I have no errors in it. I think I removed all the errors. So let's go back out to the main Homebase screen. Now, before I show you the electronic signature capabilities, the other thing I would like to mention, remember the feature where I showed you that you can track missing information? If you have any clients who currently have anything in that missing list, on the left-hand side on the Homebase screen, you see there's a column, and at the top it's got a red exclamation point on it. If I see that for any of my clients, it means they still have some missing information. As soon as you clear that out, that little thingy goes away. But if you want to know what's missing, it makes it easier because you don't have to open the return. Just put your mouse on it and double click missing information. We'll pull up the list of items, even though you're not like in the tax return itself. You can still see what's outstanding. So that's a nice little function there as well. All right, so I'm going to ask the next polling question, which is how frequently today do you use electronic signature technology with your clients? All right, thank you for answering that. Charles, to your question, I think there is a ProSeries API document that they make available to the public. I'll have to check. I know we do one for Lacert, and I know we do one for our cloud program. But why don't you just jot my email address down from the chat and send me a message and say, Kevin, can you give me more information on the APIs? And for anyone who doesn't know what an API is, it's just some documents we put together that if people have the expertise to write integrations with us, they're able to do so. So yeah, so send me that message and I will do a little research and find out and get that to you. So Greg, your question around integrations with third-party vendors for document management client portals, the only one that we have right now with ProSeries is with a company called SmartVault, and we've had that integration for over 10 years. So we do have a really good integration with them. We don't integrate yet with Canopy or Verifile. I know on Lacert, we actually have one where we do Smart Vault and Safe Send are the two that we have in Lacert. And in ProConnect, the cloud program, we actually are about to release our connection with Smart Vault. So yeah. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close the polling question now. And let's get to the electronic signature piece. So how do we send an electronic signature to a client? Remember from before, you go to the Homebase view box in the upper left because we put it in the e-file center because that's where you're going to e-file returns. Okay, prior to e-filing a tax return, you have a column that says e-signature actions. So you just click this hyperlink that says request. Okay, so now with the program, first thing it's going to do is verify that there are no errors in the tax return because we don't want you sending a request with returns that have errors in them. So once we verify that there are none, oh, is everybody saying I still see the poll? Huh, you shouldn't. I did close it. That is strange. So let me share it and then I'm gonna go ahead and hide it. Let me know now if you see my screen again. Still the polling question, that's odd. Well, let me do this. I'm going to ask the last polling question. Let's see if that like gives a little kick. Would you be willing to compare your current software against one of the Intuit solutions? So I'm going to launch it from there and just see if, I don't know why, because I closed it, and if I close it, it should clear it. Do you see the current? Yeah, you must see the current polling question. Hang on one sec. So hopefully by asking the last polling question, that will like I said, give it a little kick and clear that once I close it, because that should not happen. Okay, good. I'm glad you see the new polling question. Let's just all cross our fingers that when I close this one, that you can see my screen again. Hopefully you can. So we're at 80% of the vote. I'm going to give it about another 20 seconds to let everybody register the vote. All right, so I'm going to do my little countdown from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fingers crossed. Close poll. Now, are we still seeing the poll or are we seeing my screen? Still. What the heck? Jeez, what the heck? Share. I'm going to try the manage polls. Hide. That is really strange. I don't know why it is doing that. It doesn't, that has never happened. I've closed all these poll questions. I'm going to share that one again. Then I'm going to hide it again. Still showing previous poll. Lovely. Darn it. Well, I may not be able to show you electronic signatures if this polling question is still showing up. I'm really sorry. This is a first. Trying to think of a good way to clear these. Let me hit manage polls and see what that does for me. Nope. Huh. Yeah, thanks, Anne Marie. I know I'm getting all stressed out. I'm not sure. Yeah, I've closed it. I opened it again. I shared it again. Let me switch polling questions and see if that does anything. This is really bizarre because it's really quite easy to do. Let me go to a totally different one and share that one and hide it. I'm just trying to figure out a way that'll, you know what I can also maybe do is refresh and see if that does anything. Did that do anything? Anybody see my screen that should show like ProSeries, ProConnect, professional live webinar screen at all? Oh, it worked? Yay, okay, cool, thank you. All right, and I'm gonna pull up ProSeries again on my screen. Now you can see ProSeries, I'm assuming. Okay, great. Hey, Mark, don't blame this on Intuit, man. I'm using a third party for this. So anyway, a lot of people still say no, still the same. And some people say yes, lovely. What in the world? You can't see my program. Oh, you know what? Let me try something different here. This is really a bummer. Sharing, show screen. How about now? Cool. I did it. It only took 5 minutes. Thanks, everybody. I'm getting a lot of yays with exclamation points after them. Wonderful. All right. So back to the conference. On this screen that I remember, let me go back to the main screen here. So remember, we were working from the main Homebase screen. Okay. If I go back to the Homebase view in the upper left, this is where the e-signature part is in the e-file center. And so you see the column right here that says e-signature action. That's what you click as the little request button. And as I said, the first thing it's going to do is check the return for any errors. If it doesn't find any errors, it's going to bring up this box and say, what do you want to send your client? I want to send them authorization forms only, or I want to maybe send them the e-file auths and maybe attach a different document, because you can send anything you want. But we'll stick to this one, authorization forms only. So now what the program is doing, since it already knows what forms are required for the client to sign based on what's in the return, it's creating the actual forms right now. And once this process is over, it's going to bring up one more box on my screen, and that's where I send the request to the client. So again, it also attached the client copy of the return, so that's why it's taking a little bit longer, and I'll kind of explain what the option is for that. All right, so here's the final box to send an e-signature request to the client. In the upper left, you can see the documents is the e-signature packet. Here's the recipients. I've included the client copy of the tax return. So in addition to the documents like the 8879, it's also going to send along the customized copy of the return. Now, how do I send it? I just go down to the bottom and hit send, and that's the process. So it's kind of like 2 clicks. One to, check for errors and open this box up, and the second one is to hit send, and that's it. And I always get people that ask me here, it's like, Kevin, why would I use this over something like Adobe or Write Signatures or using DocuSign as a standalone application? It's because of the way it's integrated. You don't have to save a copy of the PDF to your computer first, then upload it into Adobe. Adobe doesn't really know where the signatures go on the forms or where the date fields go, so you have to spend time dragging and dropping those on every single federal and state return. We do all of that. Okay, now we do use DocuSign. They're our partner, but it doesn't require that you have a license for DocuSign. All we're doing is we're just wrapping up all the documents and sending them through DocuSign as an encrypted email to your client. The way the client opens the email is we do this thing called knowledge base authentication, which means we're going to ask them 3 questions and they have to get 2 of them right. And the questions are things like, according to your driver's license, what color are your eyes? And they would see 5 colors and I would pick hazel. So that's kind of what they see, but they only have to get 2 of the questions right to authenticate and be able to sign the documents. Now, there is a fee associated with this. It's nominal, like depending on how many you think you're going to do, it can be anywhere from like $3 or as low as $2.20. And one thing about ProSeries or even Lacert and ProConnect, we don't have like a lot of extraneous charges for things. Most things that you see are included, but this is something that we do charge you for if you use it. So just be aware of that. The other thing that's really helpful about the electronic signature process is that at the top of the program screen, there's a dashboard button where it'll open up and it will show you the progress of all of your clients. So the column that says status will tell you what the current status is. DocuSign is actually feeding this information back into our program, so users are able to know whether it's completed or partially signed and then transmit it. So that's kind of what all that does, yeah. All right, so it's put me a little bit behind schedule, but luckily I've asked all the polling questions, so I'm going to show you one more thing. No, Samuel, good question here is the $3 charge or the lower fee if you buy more is they call them envelopes. So it's whatever you are sending to that client in that envelope. It could be a husband and a wife that both need to sign. It doesn't change the cost of it. It could be a client that has they're filing in 10 different states in a multi-state return. All the states will be in the document. It doesn't charge you anymore. It's whatever you're sending in that transmission. The other thing that's good about it is if you send a request to your client and they just flat out don't want to do it and they ignore it, you can void requests that you've already sent and get the credit back. So you're not paying for it unless the client finishes the entire end-to-end process of signing. Maybe they fail to authenticate because they can't answer those 2 questions. You could void the request and send them another one, and it's not going to charge you anymore. So it's smart enough to be able to do that. Yep. Yeah, and of course, Jillian, yeah, I mean, most of the time, if you have clients coming in your office, you can print the signature docs and just have the client sign them. That's not a problem. Using e-signature has no effect on whether or not you're able to e-file a return. I mean, you have to have a signature, right? You're supposed to. But if you're using e-sig and you don't have a signature, you could still e-file returns. You're not supposed to, but you still can. There's no interdependency on having a signature and being able to e-file because we figure, we don't know. So, yeah. All right, the last thing I want to show, and I'll do this really quickly, is I'm going to go back to the main screen. I mentioned that we have connections with Smart Vault if you want to use that as your document system and portal, but we also have one that's included in the program. And there's a column right on your screen that says, we call it Intuit Link, because basically we're linking you and your client together. So how do you do it? Go to the client, click the invite button, and this box is going to pop up. And what it's asking you is, what would you like to populate the portal with? Like, what do you want to send the client to have them do? And there are 2 options, a checklist and a questionnaire. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with what a tax organizer is. You know how it's got like a questionnaire built into it? This one has its own questionnaire that we give you as a template. If you don't like our questions, delete the ones you don't like. If you want to add a bunch of questions, add questions to it. It's up to you. Now that's the questionnaire. The checklist is how we request the documents that we need from your client. And we base that on what your client had in the prior year return. So it's not just a generic thing that says, upload all your stuff. It basically says, like if you sent one to me, it would say, please upload your Intuit W-2, your 1099 DIV from E-Trade, your K-1 from whatever the K-1 name is. So it's very smart and knows what to ask your client for. Now, so you send a request to them. There's a website that we provide that is really nice, that's very simple and very secure, and this is what it looks like. Here it is. This is what the client sees when they log in, okay? Now, you see right here, it says engagement letter, questions. Oh, by the way, you can also attach an engagement letter. I didn't mention that. Questionnaire and document checklist. So they click the engagement letter, and I haven't been in there in a while, so it's gonna make me log in real quick here. Give me 1 sec. All right, so they click the engagement letter in the portal, and here it is. At the bottom, there's a box. John has already signed it, but normally this would be blank, and there would be text in the box that says, type your name in this box to sign. So the client types their name. Then they go back to the main page. Then they open up their custom questionnaire. Again, all these questions are customized by you. They answer them electronically. Then the way to get the documents is through the document checklist. Now, this is everything that John had last year: Intel, Mercy Hospital, E-Trade, Fidelity, K-1 from ABC, home mortgage interest. We've got a lot of options for getting the documents to you. The first one is they can click Get It From Cloud account, where they can pull documents from Dropbox or Google Drive if they happen to use those, okay? The other one is if they're on a mobile device and they click to upload their Intel W-2 on their phone, the moment they click the blue button, Share a Document, we're going to enable the camera. They snap a photo so they can take pictures of everything. If they know how to scan documents, they can also do that. And then on their PC or their Mac, they can click Share a Document and use the upload button, and we're browsing the computer with all my personal photos that you don't want to see. And then the last one is if you have clients that can't find how to find their tax statements on their broker account, or they just flat out lose stuff, they can actually get those from the broker through the app. They can click here, share, and use the button that says Get It For Me. And we have relationships with about 300 banks and brokers. Your client can click their broker, put in their credentials, click Get My Form, and it'll go get it and pull it in. So it's a good feature. Unfortunately, I ran out of time. There's also another website that you have that you can log into where the data that your client has uploaded comes back to you, right? So it's a great website. It's simple. The big concern I always had on this was, if we make this difficult, what's going to wind up happening is our clients are going to call you, or your taxpayers are going to call you saying, I don't know how to use this. We haven't seen that. And we also provide a link where they can watch a 1.5-minute video. They can also download an instructional PDF. All right, final slides of the day. For those of you who have any interest in ProSeries, we have an onboarding team that helps our new customers come on board. That will include things like a free training portal where we have all these self-paced learning modules. They will help you with the conversion of your data. We convert from all the leading vendors out there. We even convert our own products to our other products. So that team will be very helpful for you. Also, if you have any other questions, you want to get some pricing on this stuff, you want to try a free version of ProSeries, there's a number you can dial to speak to one of our consultants. They're wonderful people, I promise you. They're not pushy, but you can reach them at 833-239-5787. They can help you with any of this that you need. All right, sorry I went a minute over time, and sorry for the problems with the polling question. I'll have to figure that one out. But I hope you enjoyed today's course. We're right on the cusp of the October 15th deadline. Good luck with finalizing all the returns if you still have some to do. But thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed today's course. If you want to get a copy of it, remember, check the chat, write my name down or my email address, and send me an email. Say, Kevin, send me the course recording. I'll be happy to do that later on today. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day. Bye, everybody.